Dr. Fred Johnson and hosted by Mortar Board. Hope College is home to the Diane Portfleet Alcor chapter of Mortar Board, a national senior honor society. Mortar Board recognizes college seniors for their achievements in leadership, scholarship, and service. One of the hallmark events of Mortar Board chapters across the country is the last lecture. The title, Last Lecture, is rhetorical. The lectures are not literally presented as the last that the speakers will deliver at Hope, but are meant to highlight the advice that faculty and staff would most want to share if the event was indeed their final opportunity to address the college's students. The speakers are asked to reflect on their careers and lives and to think deeply about what matters to them and the wisdom they would like to impart. Dr. Fred Johnson has graciously agreed to be the keynote speaker for this year's last lecture. He has taught in the history department at Hope College since the year 2000. Prior to his career in higher education, Dr. Johnson served in the U.S. Marine Corps as a communications electronics officer and as an infantry officer in the Marine Reserves. Dr. Johnson is also an award-winning public speaker and has been a member of Toastmasters since 2004, where he has taken second place twice in the Toastmasters World Series of Public Speaking. So without any further ado, please welcome Dr. Fred Johnson.
Thanks for the great introduction, Carolyn, and thank you for the Mortar Board Executive Committee, those who were involved in selecting me for this really precious honor. This is my second time, and I don't know that that's ever happened before. If it has, I guess I'm in good company. You have in front of you, those who are in attendance, you have a sheet of paper. What I'd like you to do is to take that sheet of paper and fold it in half. Fold it in half like that. And then once you folded it in half, I'd like for you to fold it in half again. You should have a pen in front of you. So what I'd like you to do, open the paper up. You see you got 4 sections, 4 quadrants. In the upper left-hand quadrant, I'd like you to write your last name, and then below your last name, the number 0, and then dash, and then 20. So last name, and then below that, 0-20. In the upper right-hand quadrant, once you're through the upper left hand, in the upper right-hand quadrant, write your name again, except this time below your name, 20-40. In the lower left-hand quadrant, once you're through there, write your name again, and then the numbers 40-60. And then in the final quadrant, lower right, your name again, and the number 60-80. So the upper right-hand quadrant, upper left-hand quadrant should be your last name, then 0-20, upper right-hand, name, 20-40, lower left-hand, name, 40-60, and then final quarter, name, 60-40. And we'll get to that in just a little while. Every so often, when I have scholars in a class, usually it's my modern European class, and certainly before pre-COVID days, I take them over to the cemetery at the Fairbanks and 16th Street, and I have them walk around and take a look at the headstones. If you let them, the people in the cemetery can tell you a lot about who they were, how they lived, what they did for occupations, their families, their loves, their losses. It gives you an idea of the culture. For example, some of the headstones you see over there, you see a child was buried and all you see is just the word baby. They don't tell you the name, they don't tell you the birth date. All you get to know in the 21st century is that somewhere in the late 19th century, a tragedy happened where somebody had a child, and the culture of that day, which is so unlike our culture today, where everybody's telling their business all over the space on the internet and Snapchat and Instagram, in the 19th century, all you got to know was baby. It's a traumatic loss. It's emotionally enough. They don't want to talk about it. It's bad enough losing a child. And in the 19th century, in the 18th century, people lost children a lot. They didn't have the vaccine technology that we have today. They weren't arguing about will they get the vaccination. They had dysentery, yellow fever, cholera, all these things that killed children and adults on a massive scale. And then if you look at some families, you see some names where you see mother, father, and then you see entire generations there all together. And the way that they're arranged in the cemetery gives you an idea. Is it an exact idea? But it gives you an idea of how they must have lived in life since they chose to be together in eternity. That says something about family. That says something about the closeness that they had, the ethos, that they weren't atomized and split to the four winds, that they wanted to be together in one spot in death just as they had been in life. And then you see some headstones that are really, really big with ornate writing on them. Those are very expensive. Was that a rich family, or was it a poor family that people simply pooled together their resources to give that elder, that matriarch, that patriarch, that kind of a burial? And then there are some that have some names that you wouldn't expect to find in a cemetery in Holland, Michigan. Holland, they have such a strong Dutch ancestry. Names like Mr. Chang Chao from Cambodia, who came here in the 1980s, he's there. And then others with Latino names, a sign of what's happening in America right now. There's another part of the cemetery where, depending upon where you look, if you go over to the military section part, you'll see people from the Spanish-American War or the Civil War, and it'll say 22nd Michigan Infantry. There's no such thing as the 22nd Michigan Infantry today, because that gives you, as a military historian, that gives you a marker, a reference point that once upon a time, the U.S. Army wasn't what it was today. Once upon a time, when the U.S. Army came together, it was the duty of state governors to raise troops who then sent them to Washington. And then troops from Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania formed together to form something called the Grand Army of the Republic in the Civil War. The U.S. Army doesn't become a thing or reality until after World War I. When we went to war in World War I, we went to Europe with something called the AEF, the Allied Expeditionary Force. So the U.S. Army, as you understand it, doesn't really begin to become a reality of its modern self until after World War I. And I have the students go in, I say, spread out and just take a look and walk through. And they're skeptical, I understand that, because after all, the people who are there are dead. They're not doing a whole lot. They haven't done a whole lot for a while. So the question is, what can they possibly tell me? And then after about 40, 45 minutes, I call them back, and then I say, tell me what you find out. And you'd be surprised about how much they found out. The dead are willing to reveal their secrets a lot faster, a lot more willingly than you might suspect. What I do early in the semester before I take them over to the cemetery, I have them do just exactly what you just did. Take that sheet of paper, fold it into 4 sections, and do what you just did with your name and those numbers. And I do that because I start talking to them about windows of opportunity, windows of life. There's a time when things happen. There's windows of opportunity that will present themselves to you, and you have to be wise enough, alert enough, smart enough to know when that's happening and when it's too late. Psalm 90, verse 10 in the New Revised Standard Version puts it this way: the days of our life are 70 years or perhaps 80, if we are strong. Even then their span is only toil and trouble. They are soon gone and we fly away. I started doing this thing with the paper because in my career here at Hope, I said, what can I possibly do to help my scholars understand that even though they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, they don't have time. That they don't have time to sit around and wait to get themselves together, to decide what they're going to do, to figure it all out, that the meter's running right now, that the time to have a plan and to put it in motion is right now, and the sooner you can get it in motion and make the best decisions, the better off it'll be for you, because it goes so fast. How many of you ever heard your elders say, life is short, or it ends too soon? During the pandemic, I've been spending a lot of time walking the cemeteries down around South Haven, out here in Holland, and I see the span of which people live, and it is really, really fast. The Message Bible puts it like this, from Psalm 90, verse 10. We live for 70 years or so. With luck, we might make it to 80. And what do we have to show for it? Trouble. We live with the reality of windows. Windows open, windows close, and once they're closed, they're usually closed for good. No do-overs, no dry runs, no callbacks, no second chances, no rehearsals. And why is that? Imagine if you wanted to go back and repeat second grade right now. You might want to, they wouldn't let you. That window is closed. Imagine if you wanted to go back and do high school again. You probably wouldn't want to do high school again, but that window has closed. There's a time for things. And the reason why those windows close is because this is life. This is the big show. This is the dress rehearsal, the performance, the final bow, the final take. It's happening all at once, and it happens so very fast. There are times in life when certain things happen, whether we want them to or not. We often have some control, but just as often we do not. And what are those times? The writer of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8, again from the Message Bible, spoke of those times, those windows, in the following manner. They wrote, there's an opportune time or an opportune window to do things, a right time for everything on earth, a time for birth and another for death, a right time to plant and another to reap, a right time to kill and another to heal, a right time to destroy and another to construct, a right time to cry and another to laugh, a right time to lament and another to cheer, a right time to make love and another to abstain, a right time to embrace and another to part, a right time to search and another to count your losses, a right time to hold on and another to let go, a right time to rip out and another to mend, a right time to shut up and a right time to speak up, a right time to love and another to hate, a right time to wage war and another to make peace. Life is full of these windows. But in the journey of life, those windows that will open for you in many cases, and some you have to open on your own, they're not without risk. There are people, institutions, movements, ideologies at work to make sure that you don't get a chance to see those windows, climb through them, or get the benefit of what's inside of there once you get inside that window. The great theologian and prolific writer Clive Staples Lewis, more well known as C.S. Lewis. In 1942, he published his classic, The Screwtape Letters. And in that work, Lewis claimed to have discovered some letters written by a devil from hell named Screwtape. Because Screwtape is a devil from hell, he's not to be trusted. But Lewis shared the contents of the letters anyway. And in those letters, Screwtape has a nephew named Wormwood. And he's advising his nephew, Wormwood, on how best to tempt a man into sin. And this man is known only as the patient. And the goal is, of course, to get him eventually into hell. Wormwood is a rookie devil, a newbie at this. So he's undergoing extensive training to better prepare him for tempting human beings. What does it take to tempt these human beings to get them into failure and into hell? Screwtape's generally dissatisfied with the pace of his nephew's education, not least because the patient, despite all their efforts, has converted to Christianity, and he's begun going to church. The patient, so Screwtape approximates, is about in his mid-30s and lives with his aging mother that he takes care of. The mother's a difficult woman. She makes many demands on the patient's time and energy. Screwtape urges Wormwood to make the patient think that being a Christian is an internal, spiritual thing rather than an external way of being in the world. After the patient prays, Wormwood should, he says, Screwtape, Wormwood should make him fight with his mother about insignificant details about the house and chores. That is, get him distracted on discord and argument and dissatisfaction. Wormwood, of course, remains invisible, following the patient around, constantly whispering into his ear and trying to get him to experience negative emotions, to hate himself, to have poor self-esteem, and to pursue unhealthy distractions. After a while, the patient begins to worry about worldly matters, and Screwtape tells his nephew to exploit the patient's uncertainty, that is, keep him burdened by fear. Now you have the patient who's distracted. His mind is on other things. He's fearful. He's got doubts about himself. The patient makes some new friends who are not Christians. They're skeptical and worldly. Screwtape advises his nephew to make the patient think he's better than them, in other words, become a hypocrite. Make him better than the new friends, and also make him think he's better than the other Christians who are not Christian enough. And make him think he's better than the friends who aren't Christian because he is a Christian. Then the patient does something unusual. He experiences a reawakening of faith, and Screwtape tells his nephew, going for the heavy artillery now, Screwtape tells the nephew, tempt him with sexual pleasures, and present to him a potential list of spouses whom, if he marries them, are guaranteed to throw him into a doomsday marriage that will surely take up years of his life. Use bad relationships, wounded feelings, troubled connections between friends and colleagues, because surely when it comes in the realm of relationship, it's not just marriages where people have trouble with relationship. Trouble in fulfillment, trouble with career, trouble with family. Those relationships will take up days, weeks, months, and years of time in court, fighting over the smoking ruins of what once could have been. Scholars of the Mortar Board, you don't have time. You don't have time for that. You have windows of opportunity in life for career, fulfillment, happiness, family, love, and faith. Most of them are open now, but some are closed, and others are closing right now at this moment as you sit up under the sound of my voice. So let me share with you some things that I have concluded in these reflections that Carolyn was talking about, as I have thought over the last few weeks about what to say to you, to hopefully give you something to walk away with that may be of some substantive value for you than just some abstract philosophy, which will be good enough, but something you can apply immediately. First, decide what you're going to do right now. Decide what you're going to do right now. Why? Because there will be struggle. Many of you are already going through struggles, maybe health-wise or with your emotions and so on, so you're not strangers to struggle, but beyond these walls of Hope College, there will be struggle of a type that you cannot begin to imagine. In the Screwtape letters, C.S. Lewis was telling us that we are in a spiritual arms race. In the arms race, there's no tactic that won't be tried, no deception too wicked to be held back, no lie too outrageous to not be told. And if you've been listening to the news at all, we've heard some whoppers the last couple of years. No hurt, no harm, no harassment too painful not to be inflicted. The goal of all those things is to waste your time so that the windows of opportunity available to you right now that are open will close. Windows of life, windows of love, windows of happiness, windows of contentment, windows of joy. The objective is designed to take years of your life, rob you of your youth, rob you of your hope, rob you of your energy until it's too late, until the situation is too far gone, until you're too tired, or you've gotten so beat down by life that you simply no longer even care. That arms race that I'm talking to you about is described in Ephesians 6, verse 12 as, "For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." Don't underestimate those spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. They're like what the character Kyle Reese, a soldier from the future, described in the now classic 1984 movie The Terminator. Those forces are like this. If you think of them as a Terminator, Kyle said, they're out there. They can't be argued with. They can't be reasoned with. They don't feel pity, remorse, or fear. And they absolutely will not stop, ever. Or put another way, from the 2012 movie The Dark Knight, when Alfred, the faithful butler, a billionaire Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, in trying to help his employer understand the unique and quite lethal nature of the new enemy he's confronted in the Joker, when Alfred says, "You don't understand, Mr. Wayne. Some men aren't looking for anything logical. like money. They can't be bought, they can't be bullied, they can't be reasoned with or negotiated with. Some men just want to watch the world burn. I'm not trying to bum y'all out or scare you, but I'm also trying to be very real with you. So Carolyn asked me to share with you all, what have I learned these many years? What I've learned have been some wonderful things. But I think I would be doing less than the proper service to this moment if I didn't give you what I consider to be the unvarnished truth of it all. So decide now what you're going to do. When confronting those people or those situations that are causing you to compromise your values, to make a decision that you probably wouldn't under other conditions, in that moment, that's not the time to have that debate. You need to have that decided right now. You need to figure out what you're going to do right now when there's no pressure. Will you have the courage to do what's right? My sister Carolyn, before she started graduate school, she asked me, she said, what advice can you give me? I said, make a decision. Are you going to finish right now? She said, well, I haven't started yet. I said, yeah, I know. But before you start, I guarantee you're going to confront situations and people and maybe professors or administrators or friends who are going to make you doubt yourself, make you doubt why you're spending all this money, why you're going for an advanced degree. You need to decide right now that no matter what happens, you're going to finish, or don't start. Because if you haven't made that commitment, you're not fully committed yet. Because there's going to always be something there to make you second guess, make you doubt, and if you're not decided in that moment before then, you will quit. So decide right now. Speaking to another group of young people about a month or so ago, I said, there will be friends who are urging you to compromise your values, set aside your goals. You know, they say misery loves company. Some people, when they're on the way to do something great, they see themselves going someplace different, maybe better for themselves. There are other people that don't want that to happen because when you stay behind, it makes them feel better. It's not helping you. You need to decide right now, friends or not, family or not, that you're going to fulfill your goals, fulfill your dreams. Will you have the stamina to say no and be true to yourself? Second, learn to master the art of forgiveness. Because there will be struggle, because there will be strife, and because there will be pain, master, that is, get good at the willingness and the ability to forgive. Failure to forgive leads to bitterness. And bitterness, as I have been told on occasion, is the poison you swallow, hoping it will kill someone else. Have you ever noticed that when somebody's hurt you and you hold a grudge, they go right on their merry way, seeming like not even thinking about you, then there you are steaming and stewing? This is not easy. I want to emphasize that. Forgiveness, especially the kind of forgiveness that was demonstrated on the cross, that kind of forgiveness is not easy. So I don't want to sit up and insult your intelligence. This is very much easier said than done, which is why it's done so very rarely. It's not even desirable when someone has wounded you in a way that cuts to your soul. It leaves you wrecked emotionally, financially, and maybe has cut years off your life that you invested into a person or to a cause, into a job, changing you in ways that you could never have imagined. It's hard to forgive when you're trying to work out from under all that kind of emotional rock and rubble. But here's the question you got to consider. Do you like freedom? Do you like being able to walk with your head high, your back straight, your eyes clear, and your heart full and strong without the toxins and pollutions of hate? If you like freedom, if you like being able to walk with your head held high, your back straight, and your heart free of all those toxins and pollution, then forgive. Because forgiveness isn't for whoever caused the wounds. Forgiveness is the thing that gives you the strength to live in spite of them and what they did. Are you following me? Forgiveness is your way of saying, you did your best to beat me down, destroy me, disillusion, and deny me, but I forgive you anyway. You meant to crush my spirit, control my future, leave me in emotional darkness, and take the best of all that I have to give, but I forgive you anyway. I forgive you because I need to clear out my mind, heart, and spirit with the residue of you to make room for the things that really matter. So I forgive you. In forgiving you, I rob you of the power you meant to take from me. In forgiving you, I'm going to live the life with an expectation of joy that you meant to crush. In forgiving you, I can definitely go on into my tomorrow and leave you on the junk heap of yesterday. So yes, I forgive you. Third, I recommend that you cultivate use of the following phrase: will it matter 5 years from now? So many things that happen to us right now, it's a crisis of the moment. Ask yourself the question, will it matter 5 years from now? If it will matter 5 years from now, then go ahead and respond with all the emotional energy that you think you need. But if it's not going to matter 5 years from now, well then put it in perspective. It is a crisis for the moment. It doesn't mean that it's not serious. It doesn't mean that it's not even urgent. But if it's not going to matter 5 years from now, keep it in perspective. Fourth, the great Maya Angelou, the memoirist, singer, actress, she had a saying: when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Why? Because I cannot explain it. I really wish I could explain this to you, because then I could better understand it for my own life. But it seems that there are some people who have no other mission in life other than to rain misery and chaos into your life. And once you find out who those folk are, don't see them as something other than what they've been doing. People will tell you everything you need to know if you simply just look and believe what your eyes are telling you, and believe how they're treating you. My sister Carolyn has a saying. She said, I want to teach people how to treat me. Or she says, we teach people how to treat us. And when people are walking over you, mistreating you, and it keeps happening over and over again, and you don't say anything about it, and it keeps on going on and on and on and on, that person gets the message that you don't mind that. Guess what they keep on doing? The same thing until you say no. Then they'll change their behavior when you say so. When people show you who they are, believe them. And again, it doesn't mean that people can't change. It doesn't mean that they can't say they're sorry. And it doesn't mean that a situation can't improve. But until you see that for yourself, until you're satisfied for yourself, then you need to operate on your own judgment. Fifth, all it takes is one. One decision, that is. I am convinced that certainly in my children, the experience I had with raising my own two sons, and I tell my students in classes sometimes that I spend many nights pacing the floor at 3:30 in the morning. And I'm not kidding. I pace the floor at 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning wondering, am I giving you all what you need to survive beyond these walls out there? Am I giving you what you need to not only be smart at what you do, but to survive the politics of what you do, the people you're going to meet, the folk that will have no good intentions for you for whatever reason, for no fault of your own. That's just who they are, and they're gunning for you. Am I giving you the kind of emotional the kind of emotional tools you need to deal with those situations out there? And one of the things that leads me up at night also is that, as I told again, this group of young people I talked to very recently, the reason why our parents worry about us, your professors and your elders and pastors worry about you is because at this point, you have no idea of the power you hold in your hands when it comes to one decision. One decision can turn your life into a sideshow, a freak show. One decision can send you down a path that will take you years, decades to unravel. One decision. Decisions that have nuclear power in them. One decision can make things good for you for a long, long time. One decision can make things go sideways for you for a long time, if not forever. One decision. And your parents know about that one decision. Your professors know about the power of one decision. Please be aware of that. Sometimes you hear the saying, don't sweat the small stuff. I want to push back against that. Do sweat the small stuff. Pay attention to the small things that matter. We're too quick to overlook the people whom we presume are not important. In my previous life at Aircraft Braking Systems, when I was a training coordinator for the company, I often gave corporate tours to our suppliers from Boeing, or our customers from Boeing, or Lockheed Martin, or Fairchild, or the different airlines, and they would come in and they would say sometimes, well, we want to see the man in charge. I say, okay, do you want to see the man in charge or the woman who gets things done? Now the smart one said, I want to see the woman that gets things done. Good. The guy in charge, guess who he took his orders from? He's the administrative assistant, the woman that got things done. She was the one that gave him his schedule every morning. Without her, he couldn't do his job. So take notice of the people who are emptying the trash cans, the custodial staff, the ones at the drive-through window. You know, the ones who have been out there who couldn't work from home, the ones who didn't have the option of doing it remotely, who had no choice but to get out of bed and go into a job and be an essential worker during this time of pandemic, when the whole world's been practically on lockdown. The ones that have been out there picking up the trash anyway. The ones that have been coming into the house, establishing those cable connections so that we could do this work remotely. They matter. Why else does doing it? Why else does paying attention to the small stuff matter? It matters because, you know, when you have the kind of situation going on in the streets like we've had, it's because we have not been paying attention to problems that have been happening for a long time. Before the pandemic, these problems existed. They didn't all of a sudden manifest. It's just that now that the whole world has slowed down, we have no choice but to see them. You can't ignore them. If we don't want to deal with this again in the future, we got to pay attention to the small stuff. Seventh, be grateful. Cultivate an attitude of gratitude. That sounds so cheesy, so corny. But you know, it sounds cheesy and corny until you get the phone call that I had the other night where a guy that I went to high school with, he is in a nursing home now because his body has been taken over by MS, multiple sclerosis. His younger sister needs a liver transplant. His wife has Crohn's disease. His older sister is in a nursing home because her body has been racked together by multiple sclerosis. His oldest daughter is looking at the necessity of a double mastectomy because she's been diagnosed with breast cancer and may have to go on dialysis too. You know, to be able to stand up and breathe on your own and see and hear and feel the cool air on your face and to wiggle your finger like this, all because you wanted to, without somebody helping you, to digest your food without having Crohn's disease messing up your digestive system, you know what that's called? That's called a blessing from God. Cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Tomorrow morning, if you get up, if you wake up and stand up on your own and dress yourself by yourself and go get your breakfast on your own and can feed yourself, you know what that's called? That's called having a good day. It doesn't get much better than that. Eighth, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. That's a quote attributed to Thomas Jefferson. When I was growing up in the D.C. area, I would take the train downtown to Washington, D.C. to the National Archives to do research, and I would always stop by that part on the outside of the National Archives. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We must be eternally vigilant and watchful because there are enemies not just without, but within, as we now know, who will seek to destroy this democratic republic. But it's not just about national security. It's not just about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Your freedom also requires you to establish an aggressive, vigilant, watchful guard. Guard your mind, guard your emotions, and guard your spirit from forces within and forces without that are seeking to destroy your democratic republic within. Guard the territory of your heart. Be careful who you let whisper into your ear. Watch what you watch on TV. Read good stuff. There's more than enough negative stuff out there. Be sure you're counteracting that with some positive stuff as well. Be a lifelong learner. You already got to jump on the rest of the world. You're here at Hope College, where we value liberal arts education and lifelong learning. Howard University just announced they're going to eliminate their classics department. Their schools shutting down their history departments. If you've been looking at what's been happening politically, sociologically, around the country, does it seem like we need to know less? There's already enough of that. Post a guard on the gates of entry with instructions that people who come to sow hate, division, discord, and confusion, no entry allowed. 9, dare to dream your dream. That sounds so hokey, doesn't it? We spend so much time talking about science, technology, engineering, math, political science and historical research, blah, blah, blah. Who's got time to dream? Got to come here, get a degree, get a job. Well, you can do that if working a job is a fulfillment that you're going after. But we operate around here under the assumption that you're here for a little bit more than that. Of course, we're going to equip you to get the job, but we're also trying to help you equip yourself to get a life as well. So dare to dream your dream. Here's a question. If you died right now, at this moment, what dreams would die with you? If you expired right now, what dreams would die with you right now? What have you not done yet? Les Brown put it this way. The ideal situation for a man or woman to lead this life is to have family members praying with them as they cross over into eternity. But imagine being on your deathbed and standing around your bed were the ghosts of ideas, dreams, the abilities, the talents given to you by life, and that you, for whatever reason, you never acted on those ideas, you never pursued that dream, you never used those talents, we never saw your leadership, you never used your voice, you never wrote that book, and there they are, all the ghosts of those talents and those gifts, standing around your bed, looking at you with large, angry eyes, and they say to you the following: we came to you, and only you could have given us life. And now, we had to die with you forever. And the question is, if you died today, what dreams, what abilities, what talents, what gifts would die with you? But remember, like Denzel Washington once said, dreams without goals, without a plan, without persistent, consistent hard work, they'll remain dreams. I had 2 dreams in life. One was to be a military officer. The other was to teach history at a college. When I finally was on the verge of fulfilling my second dream, as I was leaving aircraft braking systems, somebody said to me, well, so you're going to go teach history, huh? I said, yeah. He said, well, can you be successful at that? I said, I don't know if you could. I'm going to go find out. It's your dream. Invest in it. And then believe in the one who was sent to redeem the world. I know that we live in a day and time where sometimes people get kind of real hesitant about mentioning the name of Jesus and letting people specifically and clearly identify themselves with being a follower of the Master. I'm not doing that. I want you all to know very clearly that I'm not ashamed to identify with him and say that I'm a follower, or at least I'm attempting to follow as best I can. Reverend S.M. Lockridge, the late S.M. Lockridge, put it this way: I've come to say today that in these days when we're killing ourselves trying to live, people still think they can find peace of mind in pills. They try to eat their way to ecstasy. They try to drink their way to pleasure. They try to smoke their way to settle nerves. They try to puff their way to popularity. They try to push their way to power. They try to bully their way to friendship. They try to bomb their way to world peace. He went on to say, but I've come to say today to let you know that I know where a poor person has a chance, where a sick person can get well, where an ignorant person can become wise, where a bad person can be made good, a good person can be made better, and even a dead person can be made alive, and it's in Jesus Christ. And when I thought about what Reverend Lockridge said in that sermon, I'll forward it to Carol, the link to Carol, and she can forward it to the rest of you all. But it made me think of something that happened in 1968 on this issue of believing. 1968, for those who lived through it, was a year that could not end soon enough. In January 1968, something called the Tet Offensive in Vietnam was launched. And it was a thing that basically blew the Vietnam War open and let everybody know that America We thought we had been winning the war. Clearly, we had not been winning the war. If we were winning the war, the North Vietnamese should not have been able to counterattack and nearly throw us out of the country like they did. So people began asking, what are we doing there? What's the mission? What's the goal? We've been there for what, 5, 6, 7 years now? And body bags are coming home. We thought we were turning the corner. You told us that we were winning, and now clearly we're not. What's going on? Have you been lying to us? The answer was, yes, we've been lying to you, and no, we don't know when we're coming home. We don't know what the objective is. The anti-war movement gathered momentum. In that same month of January 1968, a U.S. spy ship was seized by North Koreans off the coast of North Korea. In March 1968, President Johnson decided he wasn't going to run again, which caught everyone by surprise. Then a few weeks after he made that announcement, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. He'd been down there in Memphis helping a bunch of sanitation workers who wanted better pay, better hours, and better working conditions. But they weren't walking around with signs that said, I want better pay, better hours, better working conditions. They were walking around with signs that said, I am a man. You see, because it was 1968, and these sanitation workers were mostly black, and they were in Tennessee, meaning the South. And being black men, sanitation workers, they were saying, look, you're not even treating me like a human being. So you can't even get your mind around the fact that I'm a human being first, I'm a man, then what's the point of talking about my pay, my work conditions, or my work hours, if you can't even get in touch with my humanity? Because only human beings deserve better pay, better work conditions, and better work hours. But you think I'm something less than human being. And then in August 1968, Robert F. Kennedy, the brother of the slain John F. Kennedy, a martyred president, he himself was shot in Los Angeles while campaigning. 1968 was a terrible year. People could not wait for it to end. Then we finally got to December 1968, and something happened in the realm of space. These are pictures from the Hubble Space Telescope. No one saw this coming. Oh, we knew about it. People who were alive then knew about the Apollo space program. And we knew that there were tremendous things in the heaven, but down here on Earth, chaos, mayhem, confusion was the rule of the day. Oh, you think we got chaos today? Take a visit to 1968. Out there in space, people's attention was caught for a moment by a thing commonly known as the moon. And on December 24, 1968, these three men from the left, Bill Anders, Jim Lovell, and Frank Borman. Jim Lovell will go on to command the Apollo 13 spacecraft, which got in trouble in space. The very famous phrase, Houston, we have a problem. Frank Borman will go on to become the president of Eastern Airlines, no longer existing now. Bill Anders went on to have a very distinguishing career in diplomacy and as a corporate executive. But on December 24, 1968, at the end of that long, terrible year, Bill Anders, his role in the mission was to take pictures of the moon, because the Apollo 8 spacecraft, the Apollo 8 mission, was designed to do one thing. Their mission objective was to determine, can we get from the Earth to the moon and back? Well, they got there. But Bill Anders was also assigned to take pictures of the moon. And then while the mission was going, while they were coming around the moon, they saw this. Jim Lovell saw this. Bill Anders saw this. They scrambled around to get the camera and took the picture. This picture is known as Earthrise. And when people saw this picture of the Earth hanging out there in the black void of space and all that vastness, and they saw, you know, it looks so fragile. It looks so pretty. It looks so wonderful. It looks very finite. There's one Earth, no more land, no more water, no more air. This is all we get. And it made people rethink their entire relationship with the planet. It's not an accident that 2 years later we had the first Earth Day in 1970, the beginning of the modern day environmental movement, off of this picture. And many people who otherwise had not been believing in God, they looked at that and saw the desolation of the moon in the foreground and the perfection and beauty of the earth in the background. and wondered who's keeping all that in place. For some people, the conclusion was obvious. Now, ironically enough, Bill Anders, one of the Austrian astronauts, who had been a very devout Christian, he looked at that and reached a different conclusion. He said that an insignificant planet in an otherwise insignificant galaxy, or insignificant solar system in an insignificant galaxy, among all the major galaxies out there, cannot possibly be the apple's eye of a super being. So he reached a different conclusion. Same picture, different reactions. I see this, and I see a finite, precious planet that has a combination of the right amount of air, water, biological circumstances to support and sustain life. And if in fact we are an insignificant planet in an insignificant solar system, in an insignificant galaxy, in the vastness of that thing called space, it is highly unusual that our planet, out of all these, would have all this going on. And we may not be the only one, but we don't know that yet. I choose to believe that there is God out there. I choose to believe that he sent a son to redeem us. I choose to believe that that son bought us some time, gave us a window of opportunity that everybody has to accept him or reject him. Reverend Lockridge said in his sermon that deathbed conversions, they work, but they're a big gamble. Windows of opportunity. You have somebody before you. But some of them are closing right now. Let me show you what I mean. Take that sheet of paper. Go ahead, take it. Put it up. The quadrant that says, it has your name from 0 to 20, tear that out. Hold up what remains. Scholars of the Mortar Board, that 0 to 20, that was from your birthday, the date of your birth, to right now, roughly 20 years old. That's how much of your life you've already lived up. That's how much you've used already, didn't even know it. That's how fast time has passed. If your life were comprised of just that one sheet of paper, you've already used up 25% of it, 1/4 of it. Are you following me? Go to the second quarter that says 20 to 40 on the paper. Tear that off too. Hold up what you have left. See, the period from 20 to 40, if you're 20 or 21 or going to be 20 real soon, you're already on the clock. You're already using that up. You've used up one part completely, and you're already using the other part. To 40 years old. Zero to 20 was just getting you here. 20 to 40, that's where you do your college thing. You meet someone, you get married, maybe you don't get married, you get a job, you start pursuing a career. That's the part where you had children. You buy your house. You settle in a neighborhood, maybe you move around. You're building a career. That's the acquisition phase. That's the upper trajectory. But then you get to 40. And then something happens that nobody tells you about. I'm going to tell you. Tear that piece off. 40 to 60. Now, trust me when I tell you this. I promise you'll feel this way. At 40, you're still going to be a very young person. But society, Western society and American society especially, a youth-obsessed culture, when you turn 40, even though you still got plenty of gas left in the tank, like Rocky Balboa would say, and even though you still have a lot to give, a lot of creativity, a lot of life, society is going to already have you looking to the great beyond called retirement. Somewhere right around 45, 50 years old, you're going to start getting mail from an organization called the Association of Retired Persons. You're going, who are these people and how did they get my address? What if you don't want to retire? But you're going to feel the pressure of people coming behind you who are young and aggressive and want to get out there and get what they want and need to get their careers going, just like you are doing right now. That's when it's going to be time for you to start consolidating things and figure out what's your next act, if you have one, from 40 to 60. And then look what you have left. Hold up that last part. 60 to 80. Now, when you get there, you're still going to feel like you have a lot left. But there will be some parts of society, some people in society are going to be calling you old. And I promise you, by the time you get there, that's going to be happening right around this time next Thursday. That's how fast it goes. I do this exercise with the students in my Modern European class. I take them back out to the cemetery at the end of the semester. Then I give them the pieces of paper that they forgot all about all semester. For 13 weeks, they haven't seen them. And we're standing out there in that cemetery, and we're tearing off these blocks of paper, and I say to them, you are on the clock right now. You have no time to waste. All it takes is one decision. Make sure your beliefs are intact. Make sure you have submitted yourself to the one who rules all things. Dream your dreams. Plan your strategy. Everything I've shared with you. And those are the thoughts that I have for you in this, what I certainly hope won't be my last lecture. Thank you. I wanted to play for you all, if we have some time, I wanted to play for you. There was a Christmas message from the Apollo 8 spacecraft. Hold on.
We are now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament, the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1968. You couldn't have found a better way to close out an otherwise pretty miserable year. Reading from space seeing the earth from the eyes of human beings. By the way, that was the first time that a picture of the earth had been taken by a camera held by human hands. So several firsts on that flight. So to see the earth under those conditions with those words in the background, truly moving. And there, of course, were those who did not believe. But I'm going to quote James Cameron, who's the only black man ever to have survived the lynching, the attempted lynching of him in 1930-31 in Marion, Indiana. In later years, when he talked about what happened, he said that he prayed that night for them to let him go, that mob to let him go. And he said that in all of his prayers, he heard God say to the crowd, leave him alone, let him go. And they let him go. They already lynched Abe Smith and Tommy Shep, so it wasn't like they weren't going to do it. And James Cameron, Dr. Cameron said, you know, later on, people would tell him, I don't believe in that. And he would say, well, you know what? For believers who already believe, no explanations are required. And for those who don't, it doesn't matter anyway. It was a good year, a good way to end a tough year, and a not so bad way to end this talk. Thank you. Do we take questions, Carolyn? Questions? Anybody? All right. Yes.
What was your primary advice? I know you just went through a bunch of advice, but key to seniors who are about to graduate and then at phase maybe don't know for sure what their next step is?
Mm-hmm.
What would be your insight on how to navigate all of that?
For the next step, I'm contemplating because when I graduated, I already had, I was going directly straight from college into the Marine Corps. I can't say what your next step would be, but I will tell you this much: you'll land on your feet. You already have a good college degree coming from Hope College. What is your major?
I'm in exercise science. I'm planning to go to chiropractic school. This is more of a broad question.
Yeah, sure. Well, you'll land on your feet. And you know, here's the thing: the economy. What people don't realize is that this pandemic has changed this economy. And you all have lived through this, which means that you've changed and adapted. You've adapted in real time with it. So because you've had to adapt in real time with it, you're not catching up. You're right in sync with it, okay? You're right in sync with it. So whatever changes are going to happen, whatever changes are happening right now, you're right on the verge of that. Here's what I would say to make sure that you do land on your feet. We have, in the corporate world, they talk about something called soft skills. Soft skills are what I've been doing up here. Communicating, talking, making eye contact, the ability to get along with people, critical thinking. I spent 1 year at General Motors, 1 year at a telecommunications company, and 13 years in an aerospace wheel and brake manufacturer. And each and every instance, automotive, aerospace, or telecommunications, it wasn't that people didn't know the data. It wasn't that they weren't good technicians. They didn't know how to talk to each other. So what I would say to you, those of you who are seniors, master those soft skills. Now, let me just focus upon the thing called public speaking. I tell students in my classes that I try to always embed several opportunities for public speaking, because if you can stand in front of a group of people and communicate with confidence and with clarity, and to make sure that the message they hear is the one that you intended to get out, that takes some doing. And I say especially for women, because look, someday the world won't be this way. Today's not that day. You, as women in professional capacities, need to be able to stand up here and do this, because you're going to be judged differently, and not by men, by other women. If you're a woman of color, that's another hurdle you got to cross. So you got to be able to stand up here and do this. If you're a male of color, you got to stand up here and do this. If you're a white male speaking before an audience of people of color, you got to be able to do this. Someday the world won't be that way. Today is not that day. So I would say arm yourself with whatever kind of tools and skills you can, because you already have the technical part, and make sure you can get that part done as well. your interviewing skills, making sure your resume is up to date and squared away, and the latest versions, and have several versions of it, not just one template, but several versions for depending upon where you're going to be applying. And always, 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 when you're applying someplace, do your research on the company that you're applying to, so you can have a conversation with them instead of just being interrogated. Next question. Yes. Sure, that's a great question. The question is, what's to be said with the way the Christian church has been responding to the situation that's going across the country, and there's more than enough issues. The church has a lot of work to do. Historically, it has been either silent or actively involved, and sometimes silence is complicity, and sometimes there's been active complicity. But I would caution people. I was talking to a friend of mine recently that said, I'm not going to go to church anymore because Pastor so-and-so did this. Never, ever, 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 ever let a church or a pastor or a person inform your relationship with Jesus. That's between you and him. Now, the church as an institution, that's a different matter. It's similar but different. So if you're struggling with that, then if you're part of the church, then get involved in the church and help to steer it to do the right thing. And where there are congregations or organizations that are not fitting you, keep looking. People will leave sometimes when they simply just disagree. But we do have a lot to do. If you want to take a look at this, I mentioned this in other presentations. There's an organization called the Colossians Forum. They're based in Grand Rapids. And what they specialize in doing, they specialize in things like where churches are dealing with some really tough issues like gay marriage, the Black Lives Matter movement, all that stuff. They look for those kind of issues that are tearing churches apart, because according to the book of Colossians, they go inside of church organizations and find a way of helping people sit down to disagree and talk about them, but still walk away as Christian brothers and sisters. There's a way it can be. And look, it's not easy, but it can be done. But whatever you do, don't let a disagreement with a church or inside of a church or with somebody else inform your relationship, the personal relationship you have with the master. Others. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Yes? Military? Immediately after graduation? What branch? Navy? You already been through basic? Well, I'm glad you're going here right now because, I'm glad you're going here right now because I was very worried about any of my students who were going into the military the last 4 years, because I just thought it would have been such a crime to have someone that had no military experience and no knowledge of foreign policy, no knowledge of anything to do with the military, taking young lives and essentially just throwing them into situations they're not prepared for. You're going into a rank structure. What is your MOS going to be? What's that? Flight officer? Look at what the situation is on aircraft carriers. Women on aircraft carriers are still rather new to the Navy. The military academies didn't start letting women into the military academies until like 1975, I believe. So if you've done all your due diligence and you're already signed up, then the thing to do is go there and there will be people who try to intimidate you. You've earned the right to be there. You've earned the right to be there, and stand your ground. I wish I had something harder for you. What else? You all have been lovely. Thank you.